Is intermittent fasting just a faded health craze from 2020 or the ultimate longevity hack? By 2026, the hype has settled, and now people want the hard science. In this video, we're cutting through the noise with the latest studies, up to late 2025, and the new trends in biology. Can skipping breakfast really reset your metabolism, or is it mostly about eating less? Recent research suggests that time-restricted eating, like 16/8, does produce modest weight and metabolic benefits, but mostly because you end up eating fewer calories. For example, a 2024 meta-analysis found little extra weight loss from time-limited meals except in cases where people naturally consumed fewer total calories. And a year-long NEJM trial reported essentially no difference in weight or health markers between an early 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. eating window and a normal schedule, when calories were the same. In short, it's not magic, it's science. But hold on, 16/8 isn't just about calories. New 2025-26 studies show it can trigger deep changes in your body's repair processes, autophagy, your gut bacteria, and even interact with your circadian clock. Those are the new science benefits we'll explain. We'll also tackle controversies like clean versus dirty fasting, yes, should your coffee stay black, and whether fasting is safe for everyone. First up, let's nail down the basics of the 16/8 method and clear up common misconceptions. Chapter 1. The 16/8 method. Refined intermittent fasting, if, in the form of 16/8, simply means you fast for 16 hours each day and eat in the remaining 8-hour window. Many people skip breakfast, e.g. eat 12 to 8 p.m., or skip dinner, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., tailoring it to work or social schedules. The key is consistency. Experts say choose an 8 to 12-hour eating window and stick to it each day. In practice, this often naturally aligns meals with daylight. In fact, some emerging advice suggests breaking your fast with an earlier breakfast and ending with an earlier dinner, syncing with your body's clock. The idea is that eating when your circadian rhythms are highest, daytime, and fasting at night is better for metabolism. Now, a hot debate in the IF community is clean fast vs. dirty fast. A clean fast means 0 calories in the fasting window. Only water, black coffee or tea. A dirty fast allows small amounts of fat or protein, like a drop of cream in coffee, under the assumption it won't raise insulin much. Scientifically, though, any calories can kick your cells out of full, fasting mode. Health experts warn that loading up on milk, sugar or butter in your coffee will disrupt the fasting state. In fact, Healthline notes, you should consume as few calories as possible while fasting, because even a little can blunt processes like autophagy. On the other hand, a tiny amount of fat, say a teaspoon of heavy cream or some MCT oil, is unlikely to significantly alter your blood sugar, but it does technically break a pure fast. In short, if your goal is maximum cellular cleanup, keep it clean, black coffee or water. Remember, weight loss from IF is usually about eating less. Many controlled trials find similar weight loss from time-restricted eating, as from simple calorie restriction. A big NEJM trial highlighted that when total calories were equal, people on an early 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. window lost no more weight than the normal schedule. In other words, 16/8 can help you eat fewer meals, but it's not inherently more powerful than any calorie-reducing diet. One appeal is simplicity. You don't count macros, you just narrow the window. But don't assume you can eat anything you want in that window. Quality still matters: lean proteins, veggies, healthy fats. We'll cover that in part 2. So 16/8 can be a convenient way to eat less and may align better with your day-night rhythm. But the really interesting effects happen inside your body during those 12, 14, 16 hours. Next, we'll unpack what happens at 12H, 14H and 16H of fasting, including that famous cellular cleanup called autophagy, and how your gut flora responds. Stay tuned. Chapter 2. The Science of Autophagy in AMP. Gut Health. Let's dive into the core promise of fasting, autophagy. Literally meaning self-eating, autophagy is the process where cells digest and recycle their own damaged components. Think of it as a cellular spring cleaning. During a fast, your cells realize nutrients are low, so they shut down growth pathways and activate cleanup crews. In biochemical terms, energy sensors like AMPK go up, which in turn inhibits the mTOR pathway, a major brake on autophagy. Once mTOR is switched off, the cell forms special sacs, autophagosomes, that engulf worn-out mitochondria, broken proteins and other junk, then fuse with lysosomes to break them down. This is crucial for health. Clearing out defective parts keeps cells working at full capacity and prevents buildup of toxic debris. In fact, autophagy is so important that defects in this process are linked to aging and diseases like neurodegeneration or cancer. Fasting is a natural trigger for autophagy. By depriving your cells of new nutrients, you force them to recycle old parts. Many researchers credit this process for the longevity benefits seen in animals on fasting, calorie restriction regimens. Analogy: it's like sending maintenance crews into a factory when it slows production. The factory cell breaks down faulty equipment and reuses components so it can keep running efficiently. However, a key nuance is timing. Popular wellness sources often claim that 16 hours of fasting is enough to start autophagy. The reality is murkier. The Cleveland Clinic notes that in animal studies, autophagy may begin between 24 to 48 hours of fasting. In humans, we don't have exact data, but it suggests that deep cellular cleanup may require a longer fast, or at least longer than 16H, to really ramp up. In other words, a typical 16/8 day likely initiates some mild detox programs, but maximal autophagy is more pronounced in 24 or 48-hour fasts. That doesn't mean 16/8 is useless. It still shifts metabolism. By 12 to 14 hours, you're switching from burning stored carbs to burning fat, raising ketones, and stress hormones adjust. By 16 hours, growth hormone levels may rise to protect muscle while you're fasting. But for heavy-duty cleanup, most of the research suggests longer fasts really rev up those recycling pathways. Meanwhile, your gut microbiome also gets a reset from fasting. The trillions of bacteria in your gut follow daily rhythms, and when you change feeding times you shift the whole ecosystem. Time-restricted eating essentially resynchronizes your gut's clock. Studies show that fasting tends to increase gut diversity and promote healthy strains. A 2025 review reported that various fasting regimens, including TRE, can boost beneficial bacteria, for example, Faecalibacterium, Roseburia, and Akkermansia, and raise production of short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These SCFAs nourish the gut lining, reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity. In plain terms, fasting gives your gut a break and lets good bugs flourish. This often correlates with better metabolic health. People who fast see improvements in blood sugar, cholesterol and inflammation alongside these microbial shifts. Circadian biology ties it together. When you align meals with daylight, you're working with your internal clocks, not just in the brain but even in your gut lining and microbes. For example, eating earlier, morning, afternoon, and fasting overnight has been associated with better glucose control than late-night eating. Even on a cellular level, the liver and pancreas have their own clocks optimized for daytime activity. So 16/8 isn't just a random fasting scheme, it's a form of chrononutrition. experts now emphasize that the when of eating can be as important as the what. In fact, a recent clinical perspective described TRAY as an intervention that coordinates food intake with circadian rhythms, helping treat metabolic disorders. So that's the lowdown on the internal fireworks from fasting, cells tidying up and your gut getting a tune-up. It sounds great, right? But here's the twist. Intermittent fasting isn't one size fits all. Up next, we'll explore the cortisol and hormone story. Why might fasting spike stress hormones, and why do women often have to be more cautious? We'll unpack those warnings in the next chapter. Stay tuned. Chapter 3. The cortisol and gender warning. Now we get to the most misunderstood, and most important, update for 2026. Stress hormones and gender differences. Intermittent fasting is often framed as a metabolic hack, but biologically, fasting is also a stressor. And the key stress hormone here is cortisol. Cortisol isn't bad. It helps you wake up, mobilize fat for fuel, and maintain blood sugar. But chronically elevated cortisol is a problem. High cortisol increases insulin resistance, promotes abdominal fat storage, and interferes with thyroid and reproductive hormones. Here's the critical nuance newer research emphasizes. Fasting stacks stress on top of existing stress. If you're sleeping well, eating enough protein, and have low life stress, intermittent fasting can lower overall inflammation. But if you're already stressed, underslept, or undereating, fasting can push cortisol too high. A 2024 endocrinology review highlighted that prolonged fasting increases cortisol output, especially in individuals with high baseline stress or low energy availability. This explains why some people feel sharp and focused while fasting, and others feel anxious, shaky, or exhausted. Why men and women respond differently. This brings us to the gender divide, which has become a major talking point by 2025-2026. Men generally tolerate intermittent fasting better. Testosterone is relatively stable day to day, and men's reproductive systems are less sensitive to short-term energy deficits. Multiple trials show improvements in insulin sensitivity and fat loss in men using 16/8 without major hormonal disruption. Women are a different story. Female physiology is exquisitely sensitive to perceived famine. Energy restriction, especially when combined with intense exercise, can disrupt the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian (HPO) axis. Translation: irregular cycles, missed periods, worsened PMS, or thyroid slowdown. Clinical nutrition researchers now caution that aggressive fasting may lower leptin and increase cortisol in women, which can suppress ovulation signals. This doesn't mean women shouldn't fast, but it means protocol matters. What seems to work better for many women in 2026? 1. Shorter fasts. 12 to 14 hours instead of 16 plus. 2. Fasting only a few days per week. 3. Avoiding fasting during the late luteal phase, the week before menstruation. 4. Prioritizing protein and minerals when breaking the fast. This explains why some women swear fasting changed their life, while others feel worse. It's not willpower, it's biology. And there's one more group that needs caution. People with high training volume, chronic anxiety, sleep deprivation, or a history of disordered eating. For them, fasting can amplify stress rather than reduce it. So if fasting can backfire under stress, how do you do it correctly in 2026? That brings us to the updated, evidence-based protocol: how to start without wrecking your hormones. Chapter 4. The 2026 Protocol. How to start. Let's talk execution, because this is where most people fail. Step 1. Choose the right window. In 2026, the science favors earlier eating windows when possible. Eating between roughly 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. aligns better with insulin sensitivity and circadian rhythms than late-night eating. That said, consistency beats perfection. If social life demands a later dinner, a 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. window can still work. Step 2. Hydration plus electrolytes, non-negotiable. Most fasting side effects, headaches, fatigue, dizziness, aren't from lack of food. They're from electrolyte depletion. When insulin drops during fasting, your kidneys excrete more sodium. That's why by 2026, nearly all fasting researchers emphasize electrolytes. 1. Sodium, for blood pressure and nerve signaling. 2. Potassium, for muscle and heart function. 3. Magnesium, for stress reduction and sleep. This is where many people use zero-calorie electrolyte blends during the fast, a practical tool that doesn't spike insulin and helps adherence. Step 3. Clean fast rules during the fasting window. 1. Water. Yes. 2. Black coffee or plain tea. Yes. 3. Sweeteners, creamers, BCAAs. No, they stimulate insulin or mTOR. Remember, the goal isn't suffering, it's metabolic signaling. Step 4. Break the fast with protein first. This is one of the biggest upgrades from earlier advice. Breaking a fast with refined carbs causes a rapid glucose spike. Instead, evidence now supports 1. Protein first, 30 to 40 grams. 2. Then fiber-rich vegetables. 3. Carbs last, if included. This blunts blood sugar spikes, supports muscle protein synthesis, and keeps cortisol from rebounding too aggressively. Step 5. Don't fast forever. Intermittent fasting works best as a tool, not a religion. Many clinicians now recommend 1. 8 to 12 weeks of consistent fasting. 2. Followed by a break or more flexible eating phase. Metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch between fed and fasted states, is the real goal. So with all of this in mind, what's the final verdict? Is intermittent fasting still worth it in 2026? Or has the science moved on? Conclusion. Is intermittent fasting worth it in 2026? So, is intermittent fasting still worth it in 2026? The honest answer: yes, but only if you understand what it actually does. Intermittent fasting is not a magic fat loss trick. It doesn't override calories, it doesn't guarantee autophagy miracles, and it's not ideal for everyone. But when used correctly, it can. 1. Simplify eating. 2. Improve insulin sensitivity. 3. Support circadian rhythm alignment. 4. Promote mild cellular repair. 5. Improve gut microbiome diversity. The biggest shift from the early 2020s to now is this: personalization beats dogma. Shorter fasts, strategic timing, electrolyte support, protein-first meals, and hormone awareness are what separate success from burnout. If you're curious to try it, I've put together an intermittent fasting schedule digital program, including beginner, intermediate, and stress-adapted plans, linked below. And if you want more evidence-based breakdowns of supplements, metabolism, and longevity science, make sure you subscribe. Because in health, the truth is rarely viral, but it is powerful.